The grand chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with quiet conversation, as representatives from 13 different worlds took their seats. The massive dome above them showed a perfect view of Zentara Prime's twin suns, casting warm light across the polished floor. Ambassador Karen Walsh adjusted her formal blue uniform and checked her notes one final time. Today marked 47 years since humanity had joined this peaceful alliance, and she felt proud to represent her species. At the front of the chamber, Chancellor Vex 9 of the Zentirans called the session to order. His tall, thin frame and large black eyes made him look almost fragile, but Karen knew he possessed one of the sharpest minds in the galaxy. Around the circular seating arrangement, other species settled into their designated areas. The Melodians hummed softly to themselves, their rainbow-colored skin shifting with their emotions. The Cyber Karathi stood perfectly still, their mechanical bodies silent except for the occasional whir of internal processors. Today we welcome Dr. Lisa Carter from Earth to share her research on human cultural development, Chancellor Vex 9 announced. His voice carried the musical quality that made Zentaran speech so pleasant to hear. Dr. Carter rose from her seat in the human section and walked to the central platform. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple style, and she wore the standard council research robes. She had spent months preparing this presentation, carefully selecting which aspects of human history to discuss. Some parts of humanity's past were better left unmentioned in such peaceful company. Honored representatives, she began. Humans evolved on a world we call Earth approximately 300,000 years ago. Like many species in our council, we developed complex societies based on cooperation and shared resources. The holographic display behind her showed images of human cities, art, and scientific achievements. She focused on humanity's greatest accomplishments in medicine, technology, and space exploration. The assembled delegates nodded approvingly as she described human contributions to galactic knowledge. What Dr. Carter did not mention were the wars. She skipped over the violence that had shaped human development for millennia. The hunting, the territorial conflicts, the constant struggle for survival that had made humans what they were. These topics seemed inappropriate for an audience that had known only peace for centuries. Humans are naturally social creatures, she continued. We form strong bonds with our communities and work together to solve problems. This trait has served us well since joining the council. A Melodian delegate raised their hand, their skin shifting to a curious purple shade. Dr. Carter, your species appears unusually energetic compared to most council members. Is this a recent development? Dr. Carter smiled. Humans do tend to be active. We believe this comes from our need to explore and learn. Our ancestors traveled great distances across our home world, always seeking new knowledge and experiences. Again, she edited the truth. Human restlessness came from something deeper than curiosity. It came from the need to move, to hunt, to always be ready for threats. But such explanations would only confuse these peaceful beings. Captain Jake Harrison sat in the observers section, watching the presentation with interest. As commander of the diplomatic vessel UES Liberty, he had transported Dr. Carter and Ambassador Walsh to this meeting. His ship orbited peacefully above Zentara Prime, its crew enjoying some well-deserved rest time. The captain checked his communication device out of habit. Everything remained quiet in their sector of space. Long-range sensors showed normal traffic patterns, with merchant vessels and exploration ships moving along established routes. The galaxy had been peaceful for so long that most species had forgotten what real threats looked like. Commander Alex Rodriguez, Harrison's head of security, found himself growing restless during the lengthy council session. He had attended many such meetings over the years, and they always followed the same pattern. Speeches about cooperation, reports on scientific discoveries, and endless discussions about trade agreements. Sometimes he wondered what his security team was even needed for in such a peaceful galaxy. The presentation continued with Dr. Carter explaining human art and literature. She showed examples of human creativity, from ancient cave paintings to modern digital sculptures. The council delegates seemed particularly impressed by human music, which combined melody and rhythm in ways that appealed to multiple species. One remarkable aspect of human culture is our storytelling tradition, Dr. Carter said. We create elaborate fictional narratives about heroes overcoming great challenges. These stories help teach values and inspire courage in difficult situations. A Cyber Karathi representative spoke in their synthesized voice. Are these challenges based on actual threats your species has faced? Dr. Carter paused for a moment. Some are inspired by historical events, but many are purely imaginative. Humans enjoy stories about overcoming impossible odds and protecting those who cannot protect themselves. She did not explain that many of these stories came from humanity's long history of actual violence, tales of warriors defending their tribes, hunters tracking dangerous prey, and soldiers protecting their homes from invaders. These stories resonated with humans because they spoke to something deep in their nature. The session was interrupted by a soft chime from the chamber's communication system. Chancellor Vex 9 touched a control panel, and a message appeared on the main display. Captain Harrison felt his communication device vibrate with an urgent signal. "Forgive the interruption," the Chancellor said, his musical voice showing mild concern. "It appears we have received a priority message from our outer monitoring stations." The message was simple but puzzling. Long-range sensors had detected a large fleet of unknown vessels approaching from beyond the galactic rim. The ships appeared to be of unfamiliar design and had not responded to standard greeting protocols. Ambassador Walsh stood up in the human section. "How large is this fleet, Chancellor?" "According to the reports, over 2,000 vessels of various sizes. However, I am certain this is simply another species seeking to join our peaceful alliance. We should prepare a proper welcome." Captain Harrison was already moving toward the exit. His years of military training, even in this peaceful age, told him that fleets of unknown ships deserved immediate attention. He caught Dr. Carter's eye and gestured toward the door. The council delegates began discussing preparation of cultural exchange packages and diplomatic protocols. They spoke excitedly about the possibility of welcoming a new species into their alliance. None of them seemed concerned about the military implications of such a large fleet. As the humans quietly left the chamber, Dr. Carter felt a strange uneasiness. Something about this situation reminded her of the historical events she had carefully avoided mentioning in her presentation. But surely in this peaceful galaxy, her concerns were groundless. Outside the chamber, Captain Harrison was already contacting his ship. "Rodriguez, prep the Liberty for immediate departure, and run a full sensor sweep of our current position." The peaceful galaxy was about to discover that not all species had learned to set aside their violent nature. Some had embraced it completely. The unknown fleet moved through space like a dark cloud, blocking out stars as it approached the outer colonies. On the bridge of the UES Liberty, Captain Harrison studied the sensor readings with growing concern. Each ship in the approaching armada was massive, built for war rather than exploration. Their hulls were scarred and functional, showing none of the elegant curves that marked peaceful vessels. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," reported Lieutenant Sam Parker, the young communications officer. His face was pale as he listened to the incoming message. "Put it through," Harrison ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a creature that made several bridge crew members step backward. The being was massive, with thick scales covering muscular arms and a head that seemed designed for biting. Its eyes were yellow and cold, showing no emotion except contempt. "I am Kethvar of the Drakari Empire," the creature spoke in a voice like grinding metal. "You will surrender your worlds and submit to our rule. Those who resist will be destroyed. Those who comply will serve. You have 72 hours to decide." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Harrison felt something stirring in his chest, an old feeling that humans in this peaceful galaxy had learned to suppress. It was the recognition of a predator by another predator. Back on Zentara Prime, the Council had received the same message. The chamber buzzed with confused conversation as delegates tried to understand what they had just witnessed. Chancellor Vex 9 called for order, his usual calm demeanor showing the first cracks of uncertainty. "Clearly, this is an opening position for negotiations," announced the Melodian representative, their skin cycling through worried purple shades. "They must want to establish their bargaining power before we discuss terms." Ambassador Walsh stood up, her voice cutting through the chatter. "With respect, Chancellor, that was not a negotiation. That was a threat. Surely no species that has achieved interstellar travel would resort to actual violence," replied a Cyber Karathi delegate. "It would be highly inefficient and serve no logical purpose." Dr. Carter had been studying the transmission recording on her personal device. Something about the Drakari leader's posture and expression triggered memories from her research into human evolutionary history. The way he held his head, The set of his shoulders, the direct stare that never wavered. She had seen these same traits in ancient human warriors and modern soldiers. I need to access the Galactic database, she said quietly to Ambassador Walsh. There's something about these Drakari that we need to understand. While the Council continued their discussions about diplomatic protocols, Dr. Carter worked frantically in the research section. The Galactic database contained records of thousands of species, but most had been peaceful for so long that their violent histories were barely mentioned. She searched for any reference to conquest, warfare, or aggressive expansion. Hours passed before she found what she was looking for. The Drakari Empire had been expanding across distant star systems for decades, conquering 17 different worlds. The reports were buried in old exploration logs, dismissed as rumors or exaggerations. According to these accounts, the Drakari were true apex predators who viewed other species as either threats to be eliminated or resources to be harvested. Meanwhile, Admiral Henry Brooks received an emergency transmission while conducting training exercises 3 systems away. His small fleet of human military vessels had been practicing defensive maneuvers, maintaining skills that seemed unnecessary in the peaceful galaxy. When he heard about the Drakari threat, every instinct told him to move immediately. All ships set course for Zentara Prime, maximum speed, he ordered. This is not a drill. His officers responded with efficiency that would have surprised the other Council species. Human military training never truly ended. Even after decades of peace, they maintained their ships, practiced their tactics, and kept their weapons functional. Other species had often wondered why humans felt the need for such preparations. The first Drakari attack came against the mining colony of Beta 7, a peaceful world inhabited by Melodians and Zentarans. The assault was swift and brutal. Drakari ships descended from orbit like hungry predators, their weapons tearing through the colony's minimal defenses in minutes. The colonists had no experience with real violence. They sent desperate messages asking for explanations, unable to understand why anyone would attack without provocation. Many died still trying to negotiate, offering resources and friendship to beings who saw them only as prey. Captain Harrison arrived at Beta 7 12 hours after the attack began. The sight that greeted him would have broken the spirit of most Council species. Buildings lay in ruins and the few survivors huddled in shelters, traumatized by their first encounter with genuine predators. Commander Rodriguez led the rescue teams, his security personnel moving with purpose and efficiency. They had trained for situations like this, even though no one expected them to actually occur. The other Council species watched in amazement as humans organized evacuation procedures and defensive positions with smooth coordination. "How do you know what to do?" asked a wounded Melodian scientist, their skin a shocked gray color. "We remember," Rodriguez replied simply. He didn't explain that humans had never truly forgotten how to fight. They had simply chosen not to, as long as everyone else remained peaceful. Dr. Carter finished her analysis of the Drakari just as news of the attack reached Zentara Prime. Her findings confirmed her worst fears. The Drakari were not just aggressive. They were biologically designed for conquest. Their entire society was built around the concept of dominance through force. "They're not here to negotiate," she announced to the emergency council session. "They're here to hunt. To them, we look like prey animals that have gathered ourselves into convenient herds." Ambassador Walsh felt the weight of terrible knowledge. For 47 years, humanity had hidden its true nature from their peaceful allies. They had presented themselves as just another civilized species that had learned to resolve conflicts through discussion and compromise. But the arrival of the Drakari was about to strip away that careful deception. Admiral Brooks arrived at Zentara Prime with his small fleet, requesting immediate audience with the Council. His ships took defensive positions around the planet, their weapons powered and ready. The sight of human military vessels in combat formation shocked the peaceful delegates. "Admiral, surely you don't intend to engage in actual combat," Chancellor Vex 9 said, his voice trembling slightly. "Chancellor, with respect, combat is exactly what the Drakari understand," Brooks replied. "They are predators. They respect only strength and respond only to force." The word predator sent ripples of unease through the council chamber. Most species had evolved past predatory behavior millions of years ago. They had difficulty even comprehending what the term meant in a modern context. Lieutenant Parker, monitoring Drakari communications, translated fragments of their internal messages. The enemy was studying the Council's response, analyzing their weaknesses. In one transmission, Kethvar spoke with amusement about herbivores pretending to be dangerous. But then Parker intercepted something that changed everything. A Drakari scout had reported on the human military vessels. The report mentioned their unusual design, their obvious combat capability, and the way human crews moved with what the scout called predator confidence. For the first time since arriving in Council space, Kethvar's voice showed uncertainty. These humans, they are different from the others. Watch them carefully. The peaceful galaxy was beginning to learn that some of its members had never been as peaceful as they appeared. The question now was whether humanity's hidden nature would be salvation or damnation for the alliance they had worked so hard to join. The emergency council session had been running for 18 hours when the second wave of Drakari attacks began. This time they hit 3 colonies simultaneously, each assault more violent than the last. The peaceful species watched in horror as their citizens were systematically hunted down and enslaved. Dr. Carter stood before the assembled delegates, her earlier diplomatic politeness replaced by grim determination. The holographic display behind her showed the true history of human evolution, the parts she had carefully hidden before. For 47 years, "We have lied to you," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. Not through malice, but through shame. "We told you we were a peaceful species that had learned to cooperate. That was only half the truth." The display showed images of early humans hunting massive predators, of warriors defending their tribes, of soldiers fighting to protect their families. The council delegates stared in fascination and growing fear. "Humans are apex predators," Dr. Carter continued. "We evolved not as prey animals that learned to use tools, but as hunters that learned to think. Every advance in our civilization came from our need to be better predators than anything else on our world." Ambassador Walsh felt the weight of this revelation. She had spent decades building trust with these peaceful beings. And now that trust was crumbling with every word Dr. Carter spoke, Chancellor Vex 9's large black eyes blinked slowly as he processed this information. "You mean to say that your species is naturally violent?" "We mean to say that our species knows how to be violent when necessary," Dr. Carter replied. "We created laws, societies, and moral codes not because violence was foreign to us, but because we understood its power and chose to control it." On the bridge of the UES Liberty, Captain Harrison received reports from the latest attacks. The Drakari were not just conquering territory, they were sending a message. They left just enough survivors to spread fear, to demonstrate what happened to those who resisted. Commander Rodriguez approached with a tablet full of tactical analyses. "Sir, they're testing us. Each attack is designed to probe our response capabilities." "And what have they learned?" Harrison asked. "That most council species have no concept of military strategy. Their defense forces are trained for peacekeeping and disaster relief, not combat." Harrison nodded grimly. "And what about us?" Rodriguez smiled for the first time in days. "They've learned that we're different. Their last probe of our positions resulted in 3 destroyed Drakari scouts. They're being more careful around human ships now." The truth was spreading through both fleets. The Drakari had expected easy prey, but they had found something unexpected. The humans moved with purpose and coordination that spoke of deep understanding of warfare. Their ship formations were aggressive and efficient. Their response times were impossibly fast. Admiral Brooks called for volunteers for what he termed aggressive reconnaissance missions against Drakari positions. The response from human crews was immediate and total. Every single person volunteered, from ship captains to maintenance technicians. The other council species watched this transformation with growing amazement and fear. Lieutenant Sam Parker had been monitoring enemy communications when he made a disturbing discovery. The Drakari were discussing humans in their tactical reports, but not as they discussed other council species. They used different words, terms that translated roughly as rival hunters and dangerous prey. "Admiral," Parker reported, "they're starting to see us as a threat." "Good," Brooks replied. "Fear is a weapon we can use." The statement sent chills through the council observers present. The idea of weaponizing fear was completely foreign to their peaceful nature, but it was becoming clear that humans understood aspects of conflict that others could not grasp. Dr. Carter's presentation continued with increasingly disturbing revelations about human nature. She explained how human children played games that simulated hunting and combat, how human sports were stylized forms of territorial conflict, how human literature and entertainment celebrated warriors and protectors. But this does not make you monsters, she concluded. It makes you guardians. Humans have the capacity for incredible violence, but we have chosen to use that capacity to protect rather than to conquer. The chamber remained silent as delegates processed this information. Finally, a Melodian representative spoke, their skin cycling through confused colors. If humans are natural predators, why did you seek to join our peaceful alliance? Ambassador Walsh stood to answer. Because we wanted to be more than what we were. We saw your galaxy of cooperation and peace, and we wanted to be part of something better than endless conflict. But the capacity for violence remains? Asked Chancellor Vex 9. The capacity remains, Walsh confirmed. And right now that capacity may be the only thing standing between you and the Drakari. As if to emphasize her point, alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. A massive Drakari fleet had appeared at the edge of the Zentara system, led by Kethvar's flagship. The enemy commander was done with probing attacks. He was ready for total conquest. Admiral Brooks immediately began coordinating with human ships throughout the sector. His orders were crisp and efficient, using tactical language that the other species found incomprehensible. Terms like kill zones, envelopment maneuvers, and target prioritization meant nothing to beings who had never experienced real war. Captain Harrison felt the change happening within himself and his crew. The careful restraint they had maintained for decades was dissolving, replaced by something older and more fundamental. His bridge crew moved with new purpose, their eyes showing an alertness that their peaceful allies found disturbing. Commander Rodriguez armed the Liberty's weapons for the first time since joining the Council. The ship carried military-grade equipment that had been hidden behind diplomatic protocols and peaceful intentions. As the weapon systems came online, the ship's entire character seemed to change. "Sir," Parker reported, "the Drakari are broadcasting on all frequencies. They're demanding immediate surrender of the Zentara system." "Response?" Harrison asked. Rodriguez stepped forward, his face showing an expression that would have terrified the Council delegates. "Permission to send a reply, sir?" Harrison nodded and Rodriguez activated the communication system. When he spoke, his voice carried a tone that had not been heard in the peaceful galaxy for centuries. It was the voice of a predator issuing a challenge. "This is Commander Alex Rodriguez of the human vessel, UES Liberty. You are threatening innocent civilians under our protection. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The message was broadcast on all channels, reaching every ship in both fleets. The Council species heard humans issue their first real threat in 47 years. The Drakari heard something they had not expected to encounter in this galaxy of prey animals. They heard the voice of rival predators marking their territory. Kethvar's response came within minutes, his scaled features showing genuine surprise, so the humans reveal their true nature at last. Perhaps this galaxy will provide worthy sport after all. The peaceful galaxy was about to witness what happened when two apex predator species met in open conflict. The Council members could only watch as their gentle human allies prepared to show them what humanity had really been hiding all along. Earth's response to the crisis came swiftly, and with an intensity that shocked even humanity's closest allies. Within hours of receiving Admiral Brooks' emergency transmission, the entire planet had mobilized for war. Factories that produced civilian goods retooled to manufacture weapons and military equipment. Research facilities abandoned peaceful projects to develop new technologies designed specifically for fighting the Drakari. General Nick Thompson, Earth's chief military strategist, arrived at Zentara Prime with a fleet that made the Council delegates gasp in amazement. These were not the diplomatic vessels they had grown accustomed to seeing. These were warships, sleek and deadly, carrying technology that had been hidden in deep storage for decades. How many ships does humanity possess? Chancellor Vex 9 asked Ambassador Walsh, his usual calm completely shattered. Enough, Walsh replied simply. She had not known the true extent of human military capability herself. Her government had kept such information classified, hoping it would never be needed. Captain Betty Morgan led the human special forces that arrived with General Thompson's fleet. Her teams were unlike anything the Council species had ever encountered. They moved with silent efficiency, communicated through subtle gestures, and possessed an awareness of their surroundings that bordered on supernatural. Dr. Chris Johnson, who had been working on peaceful energy research just days before, now found himself developing weapons systems that would have given him nightmares in normal times. But these were not normal times, and he discovered that his mind adapted to military needs with disturbing ease. The first human special operations mission targeted a Drukhari supply depot in the Kepler sector. Captain Morgan's team approached the enemy base with tactics that seemed impossible to the Council observers monitoring the operation. "They're moving like pack hunters," Dr. Carter observed as she watched the mission feed. "Look at how they coordinate without speaking, how they anticipate each other's actions." The attack itself lasted only 17 minutes. Morgan's team infiltrated the heavily guarded depot, destroyed the enemy supplies, and captured 3 Drukhari soldiers for interrogation. But the most unsettling aspect was what they left behind. The surviving Drukhari found their fallen comrades arranged in specific patterns, their weapons destroyed in ways that required deliberate effort rather than battlefield necessity. It was psychological warfare of a type the Drukhari had never encountered. Kethvar studied the reports from the depot attack with growing unease. His species had conquered 17 star systems through superior strength and ruthless tactics. They understood fear as a tool of control, but the humans were using fear in ways that seemed almost artistic. "They fight like us," he told his war council, "but they think differently. Their violence serves purposes beyond simple dominance." The Drukhari commander was beginning to realize that humans represented something new in his experience. They were apex predators like his own species, but they had learned to coordinate their hunting instincts on a massive scale. Lieutenant Sam Parker continued monitoring enemy communications and made increasingly disturbing discoveries. The Drukhari were not just reporting military defeats, they were describing psychological effects that their warriors had never experienced before. Human tactics seemed designed not just to win battles, but to break enemy morale. They struck without warning, disappeared before counterattacks could be organized, and always left evidence of their presence designed to unnerve rather than simply kill. "Sir," Parker reported to Captain Harrison, "the enemy is starting to request reinforcements not for combat strength, but for psychological support. Their soldiers are developing what they call ghost fears about human attacks." Harrison nodded grimly. He had not ordered such tactics, but he understood why they were emerging. Humans had evolved to be efficient predators, and efficiency included understanding the mental state of prey. Dr. Johnson's weapons research produced results that amazed even Admiral Brooks. The new systems were effective not just because of their destructive power, but because they exploited psychological weaknesses that humans instinctively understood. "These weapons are designed to create specific fear responses," Johnson explained to the military command staff. "They don't just destroy targets, they do it in ways that maximize the psychological impact on survivors." Commander Rodriguez led a boarding action against a Drukhari cruiser that became legendary among human forces. His team fought hand-to-hand with creatures twice their size and won through superior coordination and tactical thinking. The footage of the battle, shared throughout the human fleet, showed Rodriguez and his soldiers moving like dancers of death. They used the ship's architecture against the defenders, turned the Drukhari's own strength against them, and displayed a level of battlefield awareness that seemed impossible. What disturbed the Council observers most was not the violence itself, but the efficiency of it. Humans fought without rage or hatred. They approached combat with the same methodical precision they brought to scientific research or diplomatic negotiations. Captain Morgan's special forces continued their operations against Drukhari positions throughout the sector. Each mission was more sophisticated than the last, demonstrating human adaptability and learning speed that the enemy found increasingly difficult to counter. The Drukhari began changing their tactics, but humans adapted faster. When the enemy strengthened their defenses, human forces found new weaknesses to exploit. When they improved their communication security, humans developed better methods of intelligence gathering. General Thompson revealed the scope of human strategic thinking in a briefing that left Council military advisors speechless. He had developed a comprehensive campaign plan that attacked not just Drukhari military forces, but their entire operational structure. "We're not just fighting their ships," he explained. "We're disrupting their supply lines, their command structure, their psychological stability, and their strategic assumptions. By the time we engage their main fleet, they will already be defeated in everything except raw firepower." The Drakari Empire had built itself on the assumption that they were the ultimate predators in the galaxy. They conquered through superior individual strength and ruthless application of force. But humans were showing them something they had never encountered: collective predation on a civilizational scale. Kethvar found himself studying human tactical doctrine with growing respect and fear. These creatures fought like his own people, but they had learned to think beyond individual dominance. They hunted as a species, coordinating across vast distances and multiple battlefields. The psychological reports from his forces painted a disturbing picture. Drakari warriors who had never known fear in centuries of conquest were beginning to experience doubt. They spoke of humans in terms usually reserved for discussing natural disasters or supernatural threats. Ambassador Walsh watched the transformation of her species with mixed emotions. She was proud of humanity's effectiveness in protecting the Council worlds, but terrified of what the other species might think when the crisis ended. "Will they still trust us when this is over?" she asked Dr. Carter during a brief break in the emergency sessions. "That depends," Carter replied, "on whether we can prove that we choose to be guardians rather than conquerors." The test of that choice was coming soon. Intelligence reports indicated that Kethvar was preparing his main fleet for a decisive assault on Zentara Prime. The HFY peaceful galaxy was about to witness the ultimate confrontation between two apex predator species. But this time, one side fought for conquest while the other fought for protection. The difference would determine not just the outcome of the battle, but the future relationship between humanity and the peaceful galaxy they had sworn to defend. The final battle began at dawn over Zentara Prime, as Kethvar's massive fleet emerged from hyperspace like a plague of metal locusts. 3,000 Drakari warships formed a perfect sphere around the planet, their weapons trained on the surface where billions of peaceful beings waited in terror. Admiral Brooks positioned his combined human council fleet between the invaders and the planet. His ships looked impossibly small against the Drakari armada, but they moved with precision that spoke of deep tactical understanding. "All human vessels. This is Admiral Brooks," his voice carried across the communication channels. "Today we fight not for conquest or glory, but for the right of peaceful beings to exist without fear. Remember what we protect." The response from human crews was immediate and unified. "Understood, Admiral. Ready to engage." Chancellor Vex 9 watched from the Council Chamber's observation deck, his large eyes wide with amazement at what he was witnessing. The humans moved their ships like extensions of their own bodies, each vessel perfectly coordinated with the others. Kethvar opened communications one final time, his massive form-filling screens throughout both fleets. "Humans, you fight well for prey animals. Surrender now and I will grant you positions of honor in my empire." Admiral Brooks replied without hesitation. "We are not prey animals, Kethvar. We are apex predators who have chosen to be guardians. There will be no surrender." The battle exploded across space as thousands of weapons fired simultaneously. Drakari ships advanced in formation, relying on overwhelming firepower and superior numbers. But human vessels seemed to dance between the attacks, striking with surgical precision before vanishing into the chaos. Captain Harrison commanded the UES Liberty in a series of impossible maneuvers, using the ship's diplomatic origins to deceive enemy targeting systems. His crew worked with efficiency that amazed their council passengers, treating life-or-death combat as just another professional challenge. Commander Rodriguez led a boarding party against a Drakari command ship, using tactics that would have been impossible for any other species. His team moved through the enemy vessel like ghosts, neutralizing defenders with minimal violence while capturing critical intelligence. The footage of humans fighting hand-to-hand with Drakari warriors spread throughout both fleets. Council observers watched in shock as beings they had considered peaceful colleagues transformed into efficient killing machines when protecting others. Dr. Carter analyzed the battle patterns from the council chamber, providing real-time tactical advice that helped coordinate the defense. Her understanding of predator behavior allowed her to predict Drakari movements with uncanny accuracy. "They're fighting like a pack," she reported to Admiral Brooks. "Kethvar is the alpha, but if we can isolate him from his subordinates, Their coordination will collapse. General Thompson had anticipated this moment for months, developing strategies that exploited fundamental differences between human and Drakari psychology. While the enemy fought for individual dominance, humans fought as a unified organism. Captain Morgan's special forces infiltrated the Drakari flagship during the height of battle. Her team moved through the massive vessel with purpose and precision, avoiding unnecessary confrontations while heading directly for the command center. The sight of humans appearing in his own bridge shocked Kethvar more than any weapon could have. These creatures had penetrated defenses that had protected him through decades of conquest. They stood before him without fear, their weapons ready but not yet raised. Impressive, the Drakari leader admitted. You fight like true predators, but you lack the will to finish what you start. Captain Morgan smiled, an expression that would have terrified most beings, but that Kethvar recognized as the look of a predator enjoying the hunt. You're wrong about our will, she said. We have the will to stop you without becoming you. The human team disabled the flagship's weapons and command systems without killing a single crew member. It was a demonstration of capability that sent shockwaves through the Drakari fleet. Humans could have massacred everyone aboard, but they chose restraint. Lieutenant Parker intercepted communications showing the effect of this demonstration on enemy morale. Drakari warriors were reporting that humans fought with impossible mercy, while remaining utterly deadly. The concept confused and demoralized creatures who understood only dominance through destruction. Dr. Johnson's advanced weapons proved devastatingly effective against Drakari ships, but humans used them with precision that minimized casualties. Enemy vessels were disabled rather than destroyed, their crews left alive but helpless. The psychological warfare that had characterized the entire conflict reached its climax during the space battle. Humans fought in ways that demonstrated their superiority, without resorting to the mass slaughter that Drakari expected from apex predators. Kethvar found himself captured alive, sitting in the command center of his own flagship while human soldiers stood guard. For the first time in his long life as a conqueror, he was truly afraid. But it was not fear of death. It was fear of beings who could kill him easily but chose not to. Why do you not finish this? He asked Captain Morgan. You have proven your dominance. Take your victory. Because, Morgan replied, we don't fight to prove dominance. We fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves. There's a difference you'll never understand. The battle ended not with destruction but with surrender. Drakari forces found themselves outmaneuvered, outfought and psychologically broken by an enemy that refused to behave according to their understanding of predator nature. Admiral Brooks accepted the enemy's surrender, with the same professional calm he had shown throughout the conflict. Human ships moved to secure Drakari vessels and begin the process of repatriating prisoners. In the council chamber, Chancellor Vex 9 called for an emergency vote that would determine humanity's future in the Galactic Alliance. The peaceful species had witnessed their human allies reveal capabilities that both amazed and terrified them. Ambassador Walsh stood before the assembled delegates one final time. You have seen what we truly are, she said simply. We are apex predators who have chosen to be guardians. We cannot change our nature, but we can choose how to use it. Dr. Carter added her voice to the appeal. Humans are dangerous, yes, but we are dangerous to those who threaten the innocent. We offer our strength in service of peace, not in pursuit of conquest. The vote was unanimous. Not only would humanity remain in the Council, but they would be formally recognized as the galaxy's protectors. The peaceful species had learned that sometimes the best guardians of peace were those who truly understood the cost of war. Years later, human children would learn both the arts of peace and the skills of war. They studied diplomacy and philosophy alongside tactics and strategy. The galaxy had guardians who could speak softly while carrying weapons that could destroy worlds. Kethvar spent his remaining years in comfortable captivity, studying human society with the fascination of a predator, trying to understand prey that had become protectors. He never fully grasped how a species could choose restraint over domination, but he came to respect the choice. The peaceful galaxy remained peaceful, but it was no longer naive. Its citizens knew that their safety was protected by beings who had chosen to hunt only those who hunted others. They slept soundly knowing that apex predators stood guard over their dreams, and in the depths of space, human vessels continued their patrols. ready to remind the galaxy that some hunters had learned to be shepherds. The day the Council witnessed humanity's predator instinct had become the day they learned the difference between those who hunt for prey and those who hunt for purpose.